All right, so let's start. The other day, if you can't see my screen or maybe I'm not audible again, you
I
just
can
let
I
me
can see your
know.
screen. It's okay. I can see your screen.
All right, so this is what we used the other day, where we say that if you want to do whatever, like once you open, Scratch automatically creates a sprite for you, which is always a sprite, and you can change that and start a new one if you so wish. So the other way is for you to continue, like you could start a project, work it to an extent, then end it somewhere and still open it from either your computer. I don't know, someone is kind of okay.
That was my
Yeah,
dad.
okay, all right. So you can also start a project you've already, let's say we start this project now, we're not able to finish it. You could still continue with some other system, which is what I'm going to do. So if you want to do that, you just hit on file. This is file. So you hit on file and it allows you to, so what you hit on file is going to open this drop down. So you select load from computer. That's if you already have it saved on your computer. So I'm going to select this option and pick one, which is going to be on my desktop. That was what I was trying to pull. So uh, now I'm going to load this. But before that, let me just show you a couple of things before we go into that. So now, let's say we have a sprite. To create a sprite, I'm going to hit this, right? Then
Yeah.
choose sprite. Let's say this is our sprite, or we decide to work with, let's work with this, right? So this becomes our sprite. And with that, I can also create the background, which is from this backdrop, right? So I'm going to choose a backdrop for this. And let's say this is fine by us. Or let me just do this because this will help us understand what we are trying to do. So let's say we do this, right? And I
Yeah.
decide to center, if I want this to stand on the center P, that's the center of our this sprite environment, I'm gonna set this x-axis towards
Uh, the sensor
to,
0.
yeah, so I'm gonna set this to 0, and I'll also set the y to 0, right?
Yeah.
So with this now, if you move this to this point, it tells you that this is on x, that's on x-axis, this is at point 96, and on y-axis, this is on point 84. So I'm using this backdrop because it's kind of visualizes what we are doing mathematically. How about I want to move it this way? So wherever you keep it, this x and y is gonna tell you the precise position where it is, and it's composed of x and y. So we call them Cartesian coordinates. Cartesian coordinates is where you plot a position based on your x and y axis. So at this point, it's at position negative 135 and positive 109 for our y axis. So now, let's say, because I already have some that I want us to put in, if I want this to move to the right, I'm going to come to the position. This where we have position. You know, we have our code palettes. So we have where we have position and select move. So if I select move, I'm going to assign it a value. Hold on, not this. Let's say I just want to move the x-axis. I just want it to move on the x-axis. I'm going to say mm, change x. So I'm going to move this, right? And say change x by, let's say change x by 70. So once I hit enter and click this, it moves by 70, right? Seven
Yeah.
zero. So what if I want it to return back to the other side, like to move to the left? I'll assign a negative sign here, right? So clicking on this makes it move to the left, right? So the same
Yeah.
thing goes if I want it to move up and down. So if I want it to move up and down, I'm going to use my change position. I'm going to use this X, Y, because Y visualizes our upwards and downwards movement. So if I assign this to, let me move it back a bit to where it used to be. I'm going to say 70 to just move it back to where it used to be. So I want it to come to focus. So with this now, if I change y by let's say negative 20 and hits, so hitting this means it should be dropping by 20 steps. But if I make it positive, it's gonna climb by 20 steps, right? So this again makes it climb by 20 steps. So that's what I just wanted you to know before we get into what I wanted to do. So for what I want to do today, like I told you, I already have a sprite created. You could create it from scratch. You already know how to create that. So what I want to do is to load. I don't want new. New is where we create our own. So I want to load from what I already have. So I'll load from computer and I saved it somewhere in. So let me go to my desktop and pick that.
No. Lily. Let me.
All right. So what I want to load is this one that says hmm, this. Okay, so you say okay to load. So basically what I have here is just I created these are sprites, these are another sprite and these are another sprites, right? So we can do what we used to do by hitting this to change our backdrop. So what I want to create is let me just give you an idea of what I want to do so that as we do them. This is a maze game. So the idea behind this game is that our sprites, this is a sprite, this is also a sprite, and the maze itself is a sprite. So our sprite will find its way around about this maze to get to this point. So once it gets to this point, it means it has succeeded. But this is gonna be our level one. So once level one is completed, it's expected that the maze changes to a greater level of difficulty. So that's what we are trying to create. We'll create, this is not, it has no code for now. Our sprite orange card has no code for now. So you know how to get that if you want. Our sprite orange has no code for now. You also know how to get that. You could just hit a pick sprite. Then you choose whichever you want. If it's gonna be, uh, so you can pick this is the apple. You can use this, whatever you want. So I'm coming back. Then for the backdrop, I just did what you know. This is also a maze. I mean, the maze is also its price. So it will find its way, but the rule is that it can't, like, it's not going to bypass any of these walls. So for now, this is our sprites. If I try to, let me say, if I try to use the what we've used before, that was the change position, right? So change position is going to be on motion. Let's say we are changing the X position or the Y position by, let's say we change it by, we could be doing that by 10. Look what happens. If I do this, you see, it's able to pass through the wall, right? And
Yes.
go straight up, but that's not desirable. That's not what we want. And if I decide to make it zero, negative, I hope you guys are paying attention.
Yeah, it's my brother.
So, okay. So if we decide to do this way, why not? If we decide to have negative sign, this is if we decide to set it by negative sign, the same thing happens. Let me return it back to normal. So the same thing happens. It keeps moving down, but I want it to get back to where it used to be. I'm coming. Change Wi-Fi. Why can't I? I'm coming. I don't know why this is not. All right, so if I could decide to bring it down to where it used to be, and this position is position, I want this to be 10. What really happened? Mhm. I'll join you. Why is this not typing? Okay, so let me have this as I want to have this as 10 and this as negative 170. So we are back to our initial position. So that's the idea. I don't want this to be able to bypass this. So what do I do? Oh, not that. That's not it. This should be as this should be as 10. Why is it?
Well, I'm not doing this.
All right. So for this, I'm supposed to set this to this should be as negative 10, and this should be as 170. All right, so I have this back to default. So now if I want to program against this price, what do I do? You have this price selected and you start writing some codes for it, right? So what do I want to do? The first thing I want to do is when this is when I'm gonna go to my events. You know, our events are more like our triggers, right? So when you hit an event, you're gonna choose an event that you want to trigger some actions. So the event I want is when this is started, and when it started is always when clicked. So when we click on start, certain actions should happen. Remember, the sprite you're programming against has to be active. So that's why this is my active sprite. If I move over to this, you find out I'm now programming against this. So I'm here. Because I have this, I just want to ensure that whenever this is started, regardless of wherever it is, what should happen? Number one is we could have the size bigger. Let's say we set the size to maybe the size as 100, which is what it used to be. So I just want, whenever we start, this should come back to size 15.
The heck?
So size 15 makes it what it used to be. So to do that, if I want to do that programmatically, I am going to change the look because the size is all about the look. I'm going to hit on the look and choose one that says set size to, so this should set size to 15%. That's the first step I have to. So when this is clicked, look at it. I could set this to, let's say I could have it back to 100, which makes it bigger. But whenever I click on start, I want to start the game. What happens? Because of this code, when clicked, shrink it to 15%. So whenever, even if I set it back to maybe 150%, 150%, which is going to make it a lot larger. Once I start the program, it should bring it back to 150%. So what other stuff could we do? I could also set the position. So if I want to set the position, where should I go? Should I go to motion, loop, sound, events, control, sensing, operator, variables? Which of them do you think can change the position?
Wait. Wait, I'll do it. Uh, I think variables.
You think
Variables. Like probably.
I'm working on this orange cards. This is the sprite I'm working on. I want by the time I start, I want it to start from this position. From this position, and we have some cool palettes. One controls the motion, which is more like the position. The other controls the look. How do you want it to look? Do you want it to look bigger? Do you want the color to be changed? The other controls the sound it makes. We have events. Events are like triggers. Like let's say on events of me slapping you, report to your dad. So you're not going to report to your dad until I slap you. So there's a trigger. That's action of slapping is a trigger. Is an event. So once I slap you, it triggers the action of you reporting to your dad, right? So in
Yes.
this case, what do we think should do this for us? Because this is already somewhere, and I want by the whenever we start the game, it should return back to this position. So we have motion. It should motion back to where I want it to go, right? So I'm gonna
Yes.
use motion. Here, I'm gonna set the position to once we start the program, irrespective of where it is, I should set the position to. I'm gonna use set not just set Y and set X. There's one that sets the both of them, which is go to this position and this position. So our position there was 10 for X and negative 170 got us there. So with this, I am going to drag this to this point. So what this is doing is whenever this is clicked, whenever we click or whenever we start our program, the first thing is this should reset the size to 15%. It should make it this small. Then the next stuff is for it to return back to this our position, our starting position. So I'm going to hit start. So when I hit start, you find out that it comes down to where it should be. Let me drag it up again to maybe this point where it's lost. I could drop it here and set, the position changes to whatever it is, and our program is not running, right? So the position is changed. Let me also change the size to 100. So what these two lines of code do is whenever we start our program, once clicked, that is when clicked, set size to 15%. So the first thing that is going to happen is the size returns back to 15%, then it's going to go to our position. So let me start the program again. Starting this program, you find out it jumps down to where it used to be. So that's the first step. The other step is we could move this, like I said, it will bypass the walls and keep going. Now, let's say we have because these are just like elements. The way they are, these are layers of elements. So this could sit like our maze could be sitting on our sprites. All of them are sprites. So the maze could be sitting on this sprite, such that when this is moving, you find out that this is sitting uh, a step on top of this. So with that, this goes behind. So what I would like to do is to do what? To set the layer. I also want to bring it a layer forward, like it should be on the top layer. So that's gonna also be found in the loops. So I have to uh you just pay attention. I want you to you're gonna do this for me. So I can't find that for now. All right, so I want you to come to the front to the fore uh layer. That means this cannot go beneath our maze. So that's some of the things I want you to do. This is one. Then what else do I want you to do? Now I'm going to assign, like forever, I'm going to assign an event listener. An event listener is just more like that event we have. What it does is it keeps listening for an event. Once that event is triggered, it will trigger some actions. So what events listener do we always use? And I want it to be listening for as long as this program is running. That means I want it to run forever, right?
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a forever loop. That means I want it to keep listening and keep listening and keep listening and keep listening. So I'll come to my events and choose our forever. So forever listen for the following events. Now we have controls. We have controls. We have events. Now, if I want something to happen when an up arrow, because I want to bind these actions to our up arrow, our down arrow, our left arrow, and our right arrow. So when we hit the up arrow, our sprite should be moving up, right? If we hit the down arrow, it should be moving down. You can actually bind it to any other key, but I want to use the up arrow, the down arrow, the left arrow, the right arrow because it's intuitive. So I'm going to say if what, this is where we have our action. If we are gonna go to the sensing. Sensing is more like what is looking for, is listening to. So if uh we look for press down, if key space press down, that means if the space key is pressed down, an action should happen. I'm gonna plug it here, but I'm not looking for the space key. That means I should change space to what, to whatever I want it to be. We have the up arrow, we have the down arrow, we have the right arrow, the left arrow, any key. That means any key, once you tap any key, an action happens. If you want to bind it to some other key that is not, like we have 9, whatever, but for now, I want it to be tied to the up arrow. So once you hit the top arrow, then something should happen. So what do I want to happen? It should move some steps up. So to make that move, where do we tap? Do we go to loops, sound, events, controls, or motion?
Mountain.
So I'm gonna go to motion. By the time we are done with our classes, I must have learned to speak the way you guys speak. So you try and teach me to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hit on motion. I'm gonna hit on motion and select the motion I want. And that's is it gonna be on our x axis or our y axis? Welcome, daddy.
What did you say?
Should we change the? I want it to move up once we tap the up arrow,
Y axis.
so it's gonna be on y axis. So what happens is I change y axis. Let me say I want to change it by. Let me say I want to change it by 8. So look what happens. I hope you understand what is happening from here to this point we've gotten to, right?
Yes.
All right. So if I start a program, remember I'm coding against this and I begin to hit Y axis, that's up arrow, that's what I'm doing. It should keep going up. But if I hit down, nothing happens. If I hit left, like I'm doing it now, nothing happens. If I hit right, nothing happens, right? So I want to bring it back to the position where it used to be. So it should be, the position was what was the position? It's still on 10. I want it to be on negative 170. So with this is back to initial. How about I want to move down? If I want to move
It's,
down,
it's also Y axis.
yeah, it's also y axis. So let me copy this and move this back. Nope. So what I just did, because it's almost the same code, is that I duplicated this. I'm gonna control V. I moved it so I can duplicate that and have this. So this event, forever, it keeps listening for this event. If up arrow is pressed, it should move up 8 steps, right? So we need now to have arrow down. So I'm gonna click this and select down arrow. So with this now, if you start the program and hit that, this will still move up because we've assigned it to move up. So if you want it to go down, we are going to assign a negative sign here. That means it should move in the opposite direction. So with this now, I'm tapping my up arrow. So this is moving up, right? If I tap the down arrow, this moves back. but the left arrow and the right arrow isn't still working. So how do I do that? Someone can, like one of you can just help.
What?
If I want to move to the left or I want to move to the right, for the y-axis controls our movements on the vertical, right? So how about I want to move on the horizontal, like I want to move left or right?
X
Which step?
axis.
So x-axis. So what am I supposed to write? I still write the same code I've written before. I dumped this somewhere. I already copied this. I'm gonna say if key down, and what key do we likely? Remember, there's a common. You can easily put this here and have an error. This is wrong. Like I'm putting this. This is a nested if statement. I'm putting this if statement inside another if statement, which is wrong. So when you're positioning that, be careful that you are doing that outside. There are some situations where you need to do that, but that's not what we want for now. So with this now, I'm gonna say arrow what? Arrow left. So once we have our arrow left, this is no longer valid. I'm going to pick from change X, right? So I want to make a change on the X axis, and I want to have the same thing for the other, right? So I could also have this, and this is now 2. And this controls Y is not what I want, so this is gone. And I should bring in 1 for X. So for this, we now have, this should be, maybe we could leave it at 10. But here we assign what's negative. So this is a left arrow. This should be, for the left arrow should be negative, right? Left arrow negative. So right arrow, let's have this as left arrow, then have this as right arrow. So with this now, if I start the program, let me stop it and start it again. If I start the program, my right arrow moves it right, my left arrow moves it left. What's happening? I think I've made a mistake. Arrow left, press down, then set next to. Oh, this is set. You know what set does? Set doesn't change it. Set just sets it to a position. So we have one to set, just like we did. Initially we sent this like we used the go to. So set does that. Set sets it to a fixed position, but that's not what I want. I want a change. I want it to keep changing by uh -10. So with this now, if I have -10, let me delete this. If I start the program now, let me stop and start it. If I start a program now and I'm hitting arrow left, it's moving left. If I move arrow right, it's moving right. If I move up, it's moving up. So that way we could travel along our whatever. But there's a problem. What is the problem? The problem is it can still bypass our wall and move. So now I would like all motions to be moved by 4 steps. So for the negative, I need it to just be 4. This should be 4 steps, and this should also be -4 steps. So this should also be -4 steps, right? So now, if we start our program again, the movement is small, so it's moving this way. Remember, whenever we start, it resets. But the problem we have is that it goes wherever it moves anywhere. So to fix this, what do? I'm going to have that nested if we had before. So I'm gonna say if arrow up arrow is pressed down, then change by 4. But if it's gonna change by 4 and it's hitting the wall, then something happens. So what am I going to use? I'm going to use another conditional statement. If in attempt to change by 4, that movement makes it hit the wall like it has done now, it should bounce back. If up arrow is pressed, move up. But if in your attempt of moving up, you now hit a boundary, it should bounce back. That means if I have it moving here, nothing is wrong. It can keep moving up. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. As long as it's not hitting the wall. But once it gets to the wall, instead of bypassing it, it should return back to where it used to be. So to do that, I'm going to use another if statement. If you have a question, you can ask for now. So I'll be sure you're following what we are doing.
How, how do you how do you put the maze background? The maze background.
Yeah, how do you put the maze back? Yeah,
Yeah,
how
we
do you-
already searched it up, but it was not showing anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I already told you I had some maze, some.
It won't show for us.
Hello?
The maze will not show for us. How do you put the maze?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Me, I didn't know my system was not plugged. All right, the same way we do our maze, you could draw the maze, but I'm gonna send you this file. You know, if I want to have a maze, I can have a plus. All of them, like the three of them you see here, are what? They are sprites. So I could have a plus, and instead of having a plus, I could just draw a sprite from here that I uploaded from my this. So I could paint a sprite, which gives me the room to start painting, drawing the way you know, the way you know to draw. So if I want to do that, but it's gonna take us time, which is why I prepared them ahead of time. So I could draw something like this and say I don't want any background, then maybe do the same thing again. Yeah. But that's not, it's gonna take us time to start drawing that. So I did them ahead of time. I just want you to get the concept of the programming. I'll send that to you. If you have your time, you can tinker around this, but it will require you having a little bit of graphic knowledge. So they are just basically like, if I draw this again, you see this is already there. It's more like a maze, just the way we have the maze. That's the way we have this. So this is now sprite 4. I can name it whatever I want. New maze, right? And it's there.
Yes.
So that was what I did. Like I did it ahead of time because I didn't want us to go through the process of building that. So for now, I'm going to remove that. This, you know how to bring this, to stuff, right? Just hit this, choose one of them. But for the maze, you have to either download it or build it yourself. And because we are going to have different levels, I have 8 of them with different levels of difficulty navigating. So that's how I got that. So for now, I hope you're clear with that explanation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, are we gonna play? Are just gonna play other people's Scratch games too?
I didn't get that.
I I can say in the chat.
You're not playing up those scratch. You're gonna make your home. Never mind.
Never mind.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You were trying to say something. I lost. Uh,
Never mind.
all right. So that was that. Let me get back to where we were before. All right. So what was I trying to say? Let me stop this. All right, I was trying to say something. Okay, so we are on codes, right? And we're coding against this. We are just trying to fix this price. So for this now, we've been able to get it moving left. We've been able to get it right, up and down, and to resize it. So now I want, if something happens, then an action should be taken. This is how the if statement, this is the structure of the if statement. The if statement is such that if an event, this where we have something that looks like a diamond, is where we plug in an event that must be satisfied. So once that event is satisfied, this place we have opening is going to be our then clause. So the then clause is exactly the actions that will be taken when that event is satisfied. So if something happens, if diamond, then this white space. So for the diamond, I'm going to say if there's a collision between our sprites and any of these boundaries. All right.
Okay.
So if there's a collision, if there's a collision, so the diamond represents a condition that must be satisfied. So if the condition here is satisfied, then take the action that will follow. So I'm gonna take this because I want to see if this hits, if our sprite hits the boundary of the maze, then something should happen. And that thing happening is it should bounce back. So I'm gonna use this, and I'm using it inside the if statement. Why am I using it inside the if statement and not outside? Because I want this action to be triggered only when our button up is pressed. So if up arrow is pressed, it's going to change the position of y by 4. But on the condition that this is already satisfied, if this hits the wall, bounce back. So I'm going to choose a sensing. Sensing is more like an event that our program is listening to. So if the event that this is now touching something, so this touching, I'm going to
Like we have three items. It could also have, why is my mic doing this? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
I think it's back. It keeps disconnecting and reconnecting. So please move. So if touching, that's if the sensor or sensing, if it senses uh that our sprite is touching, I'm gonna hit this drop down. If it's touching a mouse pointer, if it's touching the edge, we used an edge the other time. So if it's
Yeah.
touching the apple or if it's touching the maze, so we are going to use if it's touching the maze because the maze is just an item like we have the apple and our cards, which we've decided to name orange cards. So it's just an item like we have this. So if this is now touching, if it's touching the maze, what should it do? Before we used to change, like we had a change, but we changed y by 4%. That means we added 4 to y. So if it hits that condition, change y back. So undo the action. For me to undo the action of changing it by y, what should I do? Changing it by 4. I changed 4 by, y by 4. Like I added 4 to y axis. What should I do to undo that action?
What did you say? To undo what?
All right. Without this, let me just drop it somewhere. If with this now, what we have, if up arrow is pressed, then change y by 4. That means it should add 4 to the position of this our sprite on the y-axis, right? It should move it up by 4 steps, right?
Yes.
Now, what if I want to undo that action? The action of moving it up 4 steps, if I want to undo that, what should I do?
Press down.
Yeah, I have to change it by -4, right?
Yes.
I'm going to copy this, bring it back in. So with this now, if up arrow is pressed, move it 4. But if moving it 4 now, like this one now says, move it 4 steps up. Now, if moving it 4 steps up, makes it touch the maze. That is why I have another if statement which says if touching is, now I want to have that action undone. So if it now touches maze, I'm gonna have -4 again. So with that now, let's start our program. You find out that if I hit up, 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 it's moving. But when it hits this, that is very fast. Like we might not be able to see that, but what is happening instead of bypassing that boundary, if it hits that, it undoes. Like the action is undone. The action of moving it 4 is undone by this. So that's why if I have up arrow, once it gets to this point, it refuses to move. But because I've not programmed against my left and right, this is still happening. This is still happening, but I can't do that for our up. So moving up, once it hits a boundary, it's stuck there. And that's what we want. So to do that for all of them, what should I do? Exactly the same code I have. I will duplicate that for the rest of, let me keep it here so it's easy for me to, okay. Where did I pick that from? That was here. And move that for this. So with this now, pressing the arrow down moves it down 4. So if I want to undo the action of moving it down, that's moving it 4 steps along the y-axis, then what should I do?
What do you say?
All right. For this, I have, okay, for this is what I have. I have if key down is pressed, that is if down key is pressed, arrow down, right? Change y by -4. So what that means is if I press arrow down, it should move the position of our sprites down by 4 steps, right? Now, the same condition I had here, I am now saying if that action makes our sprite touch the maze, that means if it's hitting a boundary, what should happen? If doing this, we can't move up, but if doing this makes it hit the boundary, what should happen? The action of pressing a down arrow moves it by -4, right? So to counter the -4, I'm going to have a +4. So with this now, let me stop and start again. I hope I placed it, the placing is right. So if I start this again, this could move up, but when it gets to a boundary, it's not able to move. It could move down. Something is happening. I've messed things up a bit. My down arrow is not working again. I'm coming.
Okay.
So it's now working, right? Something is wrong somewhere. All right, but did you get the logic from the first one before I fix this? Well, did you get the logic from here?
Yes.
So can you explain that to me while I try to look up what's happening?
So I suspect what happens.
Yeah, what's happening?
So the cat is trying to go to the maze, and then you change, and then the up arrow is changed by Y, so it can go up, but not too high, and then if it touches the maze, then
Yeah, I this is how I want you to take it. I just want you to explain from here to here. Like if
it get out.
key up pressed, then change Y by 4. Explain the inner if up to this point, just from here to here. Let me try to look for what is creating my code. So this is what I have. Just explain here.
The,
You very much understand what is happening here, like all of these first preambles.
yes.
Okay, so just
The,
explain the yellow.
oh wait, the, so you change the y-axis by 4 so it wouldn't go that high, and then so it can go up and it wouldn't go that high, and then if bouncing maze part of this, if it touches the maze, it wouldn't
Yeah,
change
yes,
and make it go back.
yeah, that's exactly what is happening. So with this, if up arrow is pressed, move up by 4 steps. But if in your attempts of moving up by 4 steps, the maze is touched, and this is the maze is touched, reverse that action. The action was to move up by 4, so it moves up by 4 and returns back to the current position. So that's what this is doing. This other if statement ensures that we don't bypass the boundary. So let me bring back all of those stuffs the way they used to be. So this one says if down arrow pressed. So if that arrow should be here. That was not working again. Let me start. I'm coming, I'm trying to fix this. Okay, so this is back. It works now, right? It works now. But this is not working. So if right arrow is pressed and its positioning also really matters. So I think for now we should have it should be working. Let me test again. Alright, something is still not working fine. So this works. This is not working. Right arrow, right pressed. Okay, this should be here, right? All right. Okay. I think they are fine now. Arrow up. Okay, so let me return it back to that was 10, and this was no size is 15. This should be 10. This should be 174. So we're back to initial position, right?
Yes.
Let me try this. All right, so this is working now, but we can't move up. Now, I'm going to duplicate exactly the same thing we had here. You've been able to explain what's happening here. So the same thing that is happening there is what I want to do for the rest of the conditions, can't you see? So I'm going to move it back to where it used to be. All right. So now I'm going to have a V and pick this. So for this, I'm going to have arrow down. If arrow down is pressed, and if it's now touching the maze, change this. This was negative y, right? So to undo negative y, I'm going to have 4 instead of negative 4, right?
Yes.
So with this now, if I start the program and start it again, you find out that we're able to move up, but it can't bypass the boundary. We can move right, we can move left freely, but for the down, it also hits the boundary. Up hits boundary, down hits boundary, because we've been able to protect against that movement. So what next should we do? We do exactly the same thing for, I'm going to paste this again. So someone should explain this to me before I put it back to any of them. Just this.
To all of them, so you change it like so it's so all of them when you move, you mean like touch the maze, it'll bounce back.
Bounce back, yeah. But I want to work on the x-axis, that's the horizontal movements. So with that, I'm gonna pull out this because this works on y. Delete that and now use where's that? So I'm going to use this. And for the first one that moves to the right, which is positive 4, I'm going to assign negative 4, right? Let me now copy this. Control C. So I'll place this here and place this here. So for this, just look at the signs. If plus did it for you, use minus. If minus did it for you, use plus. So with this now, if I stop the game and play, let me be sure. So you see, it's not able to bypass that wall again, and it can't go left, it can't go right, so it's forced to travel within the track now. I hope the game is interesting.
It is when you help with, but we do drop the maze. There,
You make it yourself. The idea, I'm not trying to teach you how to do graphic design. What I'm trying to teach you is how to code. You could decide to make the maze yourself. I'll show you how to do that, but it's gonna take your time. It's gonna take my own time if I like. If that's all I'm doing for the class, then it's gonna take me for more than 4 hours or even 5 to do that. That was why I had to do that ahead of time. So I'll show you how to do that. If you have time, you can tinker around that, but that's not the objective of this class.
okay.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do that. So now you looking at this, you find out that this is not able to move beyond the boundaries. So we just want it to travel along the track, which is what we've been able to achieve. But then let's say we are done for now with that maze. So for this, this is also a sprite. For this sprite, we want to ensure that this sprite is always at the position whenever our game is starting. So what do? I will still do the same thing I did for the other one. The first thing is gonna be on the event that our program starts. That is when clicked. What should happen? I'll set the size and also set the I want to set the size and I also want to set the position to be where it is. So what should I do to achieve that? For the size, it's gonna be size is size coming from the sound or the motion or the look or event or control. The size control is size controlled by the look.
If what is it?
The size.
If it's
Yes, the
con-
size. Okay.
if it's what?
Is the size controlled by, we have a palette which has a group of code snippets. So for the motion controls everything about movements, look controls everything about its appearance. The sound controls the sound it makes. Events controls our triggers. So I'm asking, for now, I want to make sure that this is this size. Where should I look for it? Because it will make you code faster, knowing where to look for whatever. You don't just start scrolling all over, like all of them to look for what you're looking. So the size, I think, is the size more about the sound or is it more about the events? From these groups, who- you said someone said something.
It only
So
runs a movement.
it's about the look, the appearance is about this look. It appears big, it appears smaller. So once we hit look, because I want to control the size, I'm gonna hit look. So the first thing I want to ensure is that I set the size to be 25%, which is the size it is. So I want to set the size to be 25%. So how do I know I'm programming against this, the Apple?
Because you click on it and then it's just not. Then you start with it.
Yeah, because it's the active object. So once it's not active, whatever you're doing could be on any other sprite. So I want it to be 25% big. Then I want the position to be here so that if I do this, keep it some other place. Once I start a program, it should return it to that position. So is that going to be on loop or motion or sound? I want to always default back to its original position, wherever, regardless of where it is before starting the program. So it's going to be on motion. So it should motion back to its original position. See, if you don't get any points, just ask questions so I don't keep going and believing you're following what I'm doing without really achieving what the class is set out to achieve. So to do that, yeah, always ask questions if you're in doubt. So I'm gonna have this as a -10 and I'll have this as 170. So with this, if I stop this program and I start it, this moves back to its original position. So somewhere here is 0 for y. So if we have a positive number for y, that means we have moved it up. Then for x, I just want it to move a little bit backwards. So with this, we can be sure that whenever we start the program, regardless of its position being here, once we stop and start the program, or once we move to a new level, it's going to move back to its original position. So that's that. And for that, if there's more to that, we could program. Now, for the maze, what can we do about the maze? For the maze, there are two things we can do about the maze. I'm going to say once we start, because I want the program to always start from level 1. We have levels, right? Like on our maze is active. If I come to the costume, like I showed you, I don't just have one maze. I have maze number 1, maze number 2, maze number 3, maze number 4, 5. So whenever we start the program from the beginning, it should be on maze number 1, which is level 1 of difficulty. You see why I couldn't possibly start drawing this here. So I'm going to select maze number 1, and I'm programming against the maze. So I'll come to the code, right? So on the
Yes.
code, whenever this is selected, the loop should be what? Whenever it's selected, which one should be presented? Presentation is all about loop. How should it appear? So
It should appear
it should
differently for
appear,
each level.
yeah, the first one. So I will look for one that, so this
Switch
says switch,
costume.
yeah, switch costume to maze. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I want it to start with maze 1. So this is that. So whenever you click stop and start our program, it presents the maze 1. If you've been observant, you find out that it got to a point where our maze was no longer this maze. It was changing. So once we start our program, it should always start at this maze 1, right? So the other stuff I want to ensure is, we can move our maze around. We can also
Yes.
move it around. It's more like the sprites. So I want to also ensure that the position is always at position 00, like it's always at the center. So to do that, to deal with position, where am I going to go? Am I going with the look, the sound, the control, or the motion?
Motion.
So I'm going to motion it back to 0.00. So this should be go to, I'll use my
And
go to.
you change it
And
to 0.
what are you saying?
I say you change it to 0. 0.
Yeah. So it should be on 00. That means starting once I hit go, everything snaps back to where it used to be. Then, okay, so it snaps back to where it used to be and it chooses the first costume. I don't think there's any other stuff we want to do for now. So we can start our program. But then there's something I want you to know. There's something we call a function call or Scratch calls that something like announcements or trigger. So that is like let's say let me look for an instance, a real life example. Okay, let's say you're to watch the okay, you're to make the breakfast, right? Now your function is to make the breakfast, but once you're done making the breakfast, what do? You reach out to the persons that are going to feed on that breakfast, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not you to now eat the breakfast, though you might have a portion, but you have to let people know that the breakfast is ready so they can come and now take the action of eating it. So this is what we want to do. Now, when something completes an action, something should happen, right? So
Yes.
now this maze, whenever it receives a signal which is next maze, it should do what? It should call the next maze. Whenever it receives a signal which says next maze, it should change its look. Remember, switch costume to maze one. So here we are going to say next costume. That's the next activity. After cooking, call the people that will eat, right? So whenever it hits this, it's gonna call the people that are going to eat. Now, how do we know? Because to know that we've completed our game, our first level, this needs to find this. So once this moves and touches this apple, it means it has completed the first cycle. Then it should announce something. It should make a call. It should make a function call. So that function call will be received by this, and this action should be taken. So let's leave this at this. I think we are done programming for the maze. We come back to this. So when this hits this apple, it should make a call. It should announce something. So we are going to start with another win because it's an event. So if you start listening for this event, you can break this down into, we can also bring them together. I will come down and explain again. So this, whenever this is clicked, then forever listen for this event. So there's gonna be a forever event. So it keeps listening. When I say forever, I mean it keeps checking for that for as long as the program is running. It keeps listening for that event. So forever, listen for what is it going to listen for? Forever, if what is our action? Our action is when this senses that this is now touching this. Remember when we use that sensing that this is touching the maze, it should bounce it back. So when it senses that this is touching this, that means we've gotten to our final destination. I'm going to hit on sensing and I'm going to still move this touching. Now I'm not going to touch the mouse or the maze. I'm going to touch the apple. So once this is able to touch the apple, some things should happen. So one of the things I would like to change about cats is let's change the sound it makes. So it could make mew. So that's the sound of the cats. But we could change that to innovation. We could choose or select any other. This is the one I would like us to use, which is share. Mm, You see that before me, just let me know.
If what?
Like share up. Like I'm looking at all of these to share up. Okay, so that's this. So I want this to be the sound that it makes now. So that's to say this is the sound that is now associated with our cards. So whenever it moves to this point, let's come back to the coding. I just changed the sound. Now, whenever this is able to move from here, look at I'm programming against this touching this. So if touching apple, that means if our sprite, which is the cat, is touching the apple, what should happen? Once it touches it, the first one should be it should make a sound. So I'm going to come to sound and say, uh, hmm, what should that be? I'm on sound. Okay, I don't think I'm there. So play sound. So it should play this until we are done with this while loop. So the first thing is gonna be to play this. Then what next do I want it to be? After playing that, it should return back to its original position. So with that, if I want it to return back to its original position, regardless of where it is, what should I say?
If
I'm
you
going
want
to
to go,
motion, right? If I like, I want by the time we're able to successfully locate this apple, once it touches the apple, there should be a clapping ovation, right? Then it should come back to its initial position. So coming back to the initial position means I'm coming back to the motion, right?
yes.
And in the motion, I'm going to set the motion by, I'm going to use a set XY, go to XY. So this is going to be our initial position was, I think that was 10 and Y was minus 170, right? So what this is doing, like what this code block is saying is whenever, like once our program starts, forever listen to when this sprite will touch this other sprite. So if touching Apple, then play that sound, move back to your original position, and I want you to also announce something. So that's on the control. I want you to announce, like just the way after preparing your food, you're going to announce food is ready. So once you announce food is ready, those that hear that food is ready will now start eating the food, right? So I want this to announce something so that the other action, remember, I programmed this to listen. This when I receive next maze, then change costume, right? But this is what is going to trigger the next maze. So whenever it hits that this, it should broadcast. So here they use broadcast. Broadcast announce, let people know, but the keyword for Scratch is broadcast. So it should announce that food is ready. Then this other maze will hear that food is ready and come to it. So this is gonna announce next maze, broadcast next maze, and this will hear when I hear when I receive next maze, I should change costume. So I think we can now go ahead and test our program. Let me stop this and start. So when I start, it moves this back to its original position. Now this is up arrow, left arrow. I'm tracing it because I already know the paths, so I can be a little fast. So I'm moving it. Once I hit boundaries, it gives me the response it's supposed to give. It's not moving up, so it's working as expected. We'll move this up, we'll move this here. So this happens. You see, I'm traveling because this is how you play the game. Your job is just to be able to trace the track back to that apple. So once it hits the apple, then that is the win. We are going to make it complex, more complicated, but I don't think we still have time. So we'll take some questions once we are done with this and I confirm that it works as expected. So I'm moving up. Let me hit this. So what really happened? If you watch closely, what happened is there was that clapping ovation, right? Once it touched this apple, there was this clapping ovation. Then the position changed again to where it was, and it broadcasted next maze. That means it announced food is ready. And this is always listening for food is ready. So whenever food is ready, it changes costume. That is why I said when I receive next action, then next costume. So if you look at this, you find out that this maze is no longer the maze. This is now level 2. So it's no longer what it used to be. Let's play level 2 again. I think I also have an idea how the maze looks because I've played it a couple of times. So we do this, right? Move this, right? So this is the parts. I know the part because I've played it. So if you're to play it, it will take you a little time to figure. You make some mistakes, run into places that you're not supposed to run into. The next thing is I'm even supposed to set a counter such that it will monitor how long it took me to find the maze. So once this happens, watch this maze. Once this happens, this maze is going to change. You see, after the clapping, it changed its position back to this and announced next maze. So once it announces next maze, the maze sprite receives the signal next maze and changes to the next maze. So I know you have questions. Let's take that. And I'll encourage you to also build this game for this week.
For the maze, like for the costume, how do you change how do you make like new levels?
All right. For the maze, this is the maze. Once we make the maze active, then the code we are writing is against the maze, which is these are the codes for the maze. This is the costume for the maze. So for the maze, I have costume 1, costume 2, costume 3, and these changes in their level of difficulty. So all these are different options for you to select, but I'm not choosing them myself. I'm using codes to control when it's changed. Like if I stop this program and start afresh, it's going to start from level 1. So this is maze level 1. What is changing is we have 6 levels of difficulty for the game. What is changing that is this. You know, remember when I said when I receive the signal, when I hear next maze, change costume. That's move the costume to the next maze, the next costume. And I program this here that whenever you hit this apple, clap for this person, change the position, and announce next maze. So what this is doing is more like after preparing your food, you shout, "Food is ready." So once you hear food is ready, those that are supposed to eat will take the action of eating. So this announces, this broadcasts next maze and waits. So once next maze is broadcasted, the maze itself hears next maze. And it says, here says, when I receive next maze, next costume. So this next costume means when I receive next maze, change costume. If I divorce them and run this program again, you find out that let's run this program again now that they are divorced. So it will receive that signal, but it won't do anything with that. So this is this. I'll quickly play the game very fast because I know the track. So it's expected that when you're playing it, you make mistake and run into here, find out that there's no roads here, then you come out and keep finding. So maybe next time we'll add timer to know how long it took one to complete the cycle. But this is what I'm trying to illustrate. When this completes this cycle, nothing really happens. Nothing is going to happen because I've divorced that event from the action. It will hear from now. Look at what is going to happen. Uh, it will touch this. This will be played. It will return back to this initial position and broadcast this. This will hear the maze will hear that what is broadcast. It will broadcast next maze. Maze will hear broadcast, but there's no action tied to that event. So when it hears next maze, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to go ahead and play. We are back. We are just within our initial maze, so the level has not changed. The action of changing the level to a different level of difficulty is when we marry this together. So once we marry this together and complete the same thing like we did before, it executes and also changes the maze to bring the next maze, which is maze 2. That's the next maze. So if you have any other question, I don't know if you're clear now with your question.
I am.
All right. So with this now, we are back to this. Watch what happens. If I touch this, we'll still have that our clapping ovation.
The level
But the maze
changes.
now, yeah, it changes now. Because the other one announced next maze and this one received the signal next maze and took this action. So how about David and Daniel?
David, come. Dale, come.
Hello, Dave.
Yeah, they're coming.
Do you have any question? He walked
No,
away.
no, I was here. No, you weren't.
Okay. How about Daniel?
He's here. I also do this type of coding in my school, so I have no problem.
You have no.
No, I do this type of coding in my school.
Okay, you do this type of coding in school.
Yeah.
All right. That's nice.
I have no
So you
problem.
okay? I have no problem. So what you guys are gonna do for me is I hope you've created. I asked you to create accounts online so you can share your code with me. So I'll send this to you, the resources I used, which is the maze and the apple. But if you want to create the maze yourself, like you said, then you can come to costume. Maybe let's
How
just have. All right, you wanted to say something.
how do you like send it? So, because it will not show like it doesn't show anything here. It just shows it shows files, edits, tutorial, and the project. It will not show. It's not showing anything else.
Okay, from where?
So you can't make an account.
Okay, you can't make a new account.
No.
Maybe your dad could create an account for you, maybe because you're still a minor.
Okay.
Yeah. Beg your dad to create an account for you with an email. I think there's a restriction around that for minors. So you could actually draw something like this and start cleaning up, but you need to be creative to be able to do that, which is why it's best to, if you're focusing on programming, you will learn how to do this if you're doing graphic design, and this doesn't have all the tools needed to build that. You can download some of this online. You can also decide to build it. But what I want you to master, remember, I'm just prepping you for our coding classes. It's not like this is what we are going to do. We are moving right into Python and JavaScript. Then we do a little bit of HTML, CSS. But all of this gets you thinking in the way programmers think. So just master how I was able to do all of this. I'll send the file to you. I'll send it to your daddy's email once we are
Okay.
done. So try to recreate them, look at them, have the objective. The objective is just to move your maze, move your cards. Your cards should be able to find its way to this apple. So this is the maze, and on the maze we have different costumes. I mean, for the maze we have different costumes. Costume number one, costume two, costume three, and that is what changes the level of difficulty. So you should be able to protect it against moving, having leeway, like moving past the walls, as it's touching the walls. So just remember everything I said about them and try to replicate it.
Okay.
So thank you. Let me know for the guys. Where exactly are you guys learning? Or should I just teach you maths following like not following what you guys are currently doing?
I'm I'm doing just like percent, like changing like fractions percent to decimal. Just
All right. Changing fractions to decimal, right?
yes, and or percentage to decimal.
Okay, percentage to decimal. So for your sister, okay, that's your sister. Sorry, what's your name?
Lily,
Okay, Lily. All right, for the guys, what are you currently doing?
what are you doing? They're doing dividing fraction, dividing and multiplying fraction.
Okay, that's what they're still doing. All right, so we'll meet tomorrow once you're back from church. We'll meet tomorrow. I'll prepare. I think we'll take Lily's class first because last time we're not able to attend to her. So we'll take your class first, then for the guys. So I don't know when you guys will be back from church tomorrow, but I'll be around. Once your dad chats me or your mommy chats me, I'll join you online.
Okay,
All right, bye.
bye, uncle.
Bye.